Good afternoon. We call to order the study meeting of the West Valley City Council with this required announcement. Pursuant to Utah Code, West Valley City has determined that this meeting will be held electronically without an anchor location, given the ongoing novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. West Valley City has determined that the pandemic presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at an anchor location. The meeting will be held electronically. Members of the press and public are invited to view this meeting live on YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/WVCTV. That can also be located on our city website for those who didn't get that information, and they can join and watch us. With that, then, we note that we have 6 council members present. Council member Fiti Manu will be delayed, will be arriving in a bit, or joining, I guess I should say. Then next, our minutes of December 8th. We need to take care of the minutes. Council members.
Move for approval of the minutes of November 8th.
Second.
What it was December 8th.
December 8th, yes.
December.
Okay. Any comments? Looks like they're okay the way they are. With that then, without objection, the minutes will be approved. Hearing no objection, I rule that passes unanimously. Okay. Next, we review our agenda for our regular meeting later tonight, as well as our special redevelopment agency meeting. Any questions or comments there? Hearing none, we'll go on to our agenda, where we have a public hearing scheduled for January 5th. I emphasize that because we will not be meeting the next 2 Tuesdays. So this that we study will be for January 5th. And the issue that we will deal with is to consider ordinance 20-50, which is to open or reopen our 2020-2021 budget for additional items. This will are some revenue increases, as well as authorizing the disbursement of certain funds, some of which have already been brought before the council, others have not. With that then, I'm just looking to, I don't see, oh, I see Mr. Isaac. Are you going to be handling this meeting?
Just for a few moments. Wayne has said he'd be late.
Okay.
Is there someone on staff that's going to present this particular?
Jim Welch is ready to start. I didn't
Very good.
know if you had anything to add to
Thank you,
that.
Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Welch, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. As you become very familiar with this, this is our periodic opening of the budget to recognize new revenues, expenditures, also the ongoing projects that have been approved that the budget was not fully expended last year. And before you, you have this categorized into rollovers, which are projects that have not been completed in the previous year, where the authorization for those funds was made and those monies are rolled over. Then we have grants, which are monies that have come in through the various grants in the either state or federal. We have other items, which are either monies which have been received for special projects or reimbursements. In this case, we have reimbursements from other cities, from out of state for fire projects. And then also there are some critical needs that have come up that have been approved by the city council for expenditure, that this ratifies that approval and puts it into our budget. So we're in compliance with state code. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this. Some of the highlights that if I could hit are there are a number, the rollovers, I think I covered those. We have some grants that are coming in for some of the CARES Act items and also the coronavirus impact on the city. Some of those grants have gone to the Maverick Center, to the Cultural Arts Center for their productions. We also have some monies that have come in from, for example, the city of South Jordan for repairs to our SWAT vehicle. And then there are some capital projects that are ongoing, that are either in process and they're waiting to complete those or get started on those. You'll also notice a big item on there is the $4 million in CARES Act funds that were received for the use of the city for mitigating the impacts of the COVID pandemic that's going on. So with those, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you had any. And like I said, this is our procedure to do this periodically to make sure that we're in compliance with state code and requirements.
Mr. Welch, would you address the three items that are capital projects, 2700 West Crystal Avenue, 2540 South? Typically, these would seem to fall into the category of rollovers.
Mm-hmm.
Would you just expand just a little bit why these are or are not rollovers?
Certainly, yeah, I'd be happy to. Usually if a capital project has been started in a previous year, enough funds are usually, I know Public Works does this, they'll find and allocate enough funds to complete that project. In this case, these are not rollovers. These are projects that are proposed for this year. For example, the 2700 West Improvement Project. You'll remember the overlay and the other things that were going on. This project has been completed, and it was done with stormwater fund balance. This was a portion of the project. The next one, the Crystal Avenue Sidewalk Project, I spoke with Mr. Willardson about this one just recently, and that one has not started yet. This is the authorization to use stormwater funds for this project, and they're actually in the preliminary stages of design. And so we'll see that probably completed either by the end of the fiscal year. It may have even end up as a rollover depending on how quickly they get it spent. The 2540 South Phase 3 project, this is part of the ongoing use of road impact fees, which are required for these specific projects, and they're part of their capital plan, and periodically they will do a budget opening to meet the proposed projects, and that's what this one is one of those projects.
So was this a change order, or why was it, what's happening?
Originally the project, as I recall, was approved for $100,000, and that was before council previously, which you've approved. When they got into it, there were some additional things that they needed to have done that would require an additional $40,000 in change orders. If those actually do come to fruition, that issue will come to council for approval to modify that contract.
Well, I thought we'd already done the 2700 West one, right?
I'm sorry. This was for the 2540 South
Okay.
Phase 3
Just the
project.
2540. Okay,
Yes.
very good. I just wanted to make sure that, because these were projects that we've talked about repeatedly, when we talk about them is not necessarily when they start, and it's not necessarily when funds are allocated. And I know, just for example, because it's easy, the last one on the list, the Stonebridge Pump Station, we've talked about, and we've already discussed that, but we do need to actually take action to put it in the budget.
That's right. So this ends up being the formal ratification of those budgeted expenditures. So you're absolutely right. Many of these will seem familiar to you because they've been discussed extensively, and some of them more recently than others.
Yeah. Well, some of them are new. Some of them are new.
Correct.
Good. Council, now that we've got all the explanation there for the public. So, any questions? Any concerns? I see Russ there standing ready to answer any questions on these, but I just wanted to make sure that some clarification got put in there on a couple of those projects, which would have, because they were talked about, why weren't they rollovers and so forth. I figure if I ask it, public doesn't have to. Hearing no further comments, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. And this will be Resolution 20-182, to approve the purchase of audiovisual equipment for the Public Safety Building, our new headquarters. Wayne, do you need to introduce anything, or do we go directly to Chief Jacobs?
We can go to Chief Jacobs if she has anything. Mayor, I believe Lieutenant Christensen's actually going to present the item, though.
He's not on yet, so.
Okay, well maybe it's the chief. Let's go to her.
Yep, I will provide the preliminary information, and if we need any more as far as details, then Lieutenant Christensen will toss me an assist. So, in a nutshell, we have been in our beautiful, new, amazing building for 14 months now. And again, thank you, Council, for providing us with this facility. During that 14-month time frame, we've been able to figure out what is working and what is not. And the good news is the majority of things are working fabulously. Our staff, employees, our sworn and civilian, are getting great use of the fitness room. Forensics is great. The majority of what we anticipated as needs is fulfilled. The reason I am before you today is we have discovered that the audio video recording equipment that we have in our interview rooms is woefully inadequate for our needs. It is a part of the overall security surveillance system for the entire building, and it has provided us with challenges when it comes to some of the interviews with witnesses, victims, and suspects. Since this is a public meeting, I don't necessarily want to go into too many details unless you'd like that information in this forum, but that's the background behind this request. Lieutenant Christensen has done a great deal of research to find us a system that would work both for our current needs and for growth as we continue down this road. It will initially equip 6 of our interview rooms, as we'll be able to evaluate their usage and needs for how often we use the other interview rooms that we anticipate growing into. But this system that we're asking for here, it will provide us with excellent audio and video of interviews for victims, witnesses, and suspects, and it will provide us with a user-friendly way of sharing that information with prosecutors and other entities, in a nutshell.
Chief, will it include anything for helping to fix your microphone there? You're loud and then you're soft and then you're loud and then you're soft again.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not quite sure how to fix that. I'm joining council from my office today instead of from my iPad in the comfort of my kitchen. But I can repeat anything as needed, or I can.
No,
switch to my
we could
iPad.
hear you, but there was definitely a change there. So you might, I don't know if you have a short or something, but that's something we ought to see about getting fixed. So we want to make sure that everything is recorded properly and clarified.
Yes, sir.
Council,
I have a couple questions, Mayor.
go ahead.
Chief, am I right that I heard you said that this would fix the system in 6 of the 10 interview rooms?
Yeah, rather than outfitting all of the interview rooms, we have found that we really only use 6 of them at a time. And so rather than outfit all of them immediately, we plan on doing the 6 that we do use. And if we find a need, this will allow us to expand to the other 4 as well.
So we would need an additional $80,000 or so, $75,000 for the other 4 rooms.
No, potentially in another, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, if we grow that much, we would need probably, off the top of my head, 40 or so. A lot of this particular cost is the installation, and the wires and everything will already be ran. They'll just have to tie into it.
So the 10 rooms will be wired, but the actual equipment will only be installed in 6 of them. That's the plan.
They won't be wired directly to those rooms. They will be wired to the interview rooms that are closest to them. And thus, if that installation does become necessary, it would be much less labor intensive.
This next question, I don't think this will impede your public safety function, but if it does, just let me know that. Are these rooms being used during COVID?
Yes. Unfortunately, during COVID, bad guys still do bad things, and we still try and catch them and lock them up, and that does require trying to obtain confessions and interviews from witnesses. And yes, they are being used on a regular basis. We just sanitize as we go.
And I guess my next question is probably for Wayne. What happened? How did we end up? I mean, surely we spent some money on a system that doesn't work in a brand new building.
So you'll notice she didn't say it didn't work. She just said it doesn't work adequately. I think out of a $25 million building, the fact that we probably are going to have 1 or 2 design changes that we need to make over time, we're probably doing pretty good.
And I would like to comment that the system itself works very effectively for the security needs of the building. We have audio or video coverage of almost every square inch of this building, audio coverage over a lot of it. It's just it doesn't catch the nuances of high pitch, low pitch, fast talking that tends to occur during interviews.
So basically, we have security equipment installed where we need to have something better quality for prosecution purposes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing no further comments, we'll move along. Thank you, Chief. We'll move to Resolution 20-183, the purchase of 3 Ford F-150 trucks from Ken Garf Ford. And I believe that this was a total not to exceed $104,000. And so it looks, unless Wayne has something, we have Eric Madsen on the line, except he's muted. Oh, there we go.
Eric, ready to go? Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't have any introduction, Mayor. Thank you.
Eric, wait a minute. There's a problem because I don't hear you.
If we can't get Eric, I can run the item, Mayor. That'd be fine. I can introduce it.
Well, let's give him, yeah, just try. Okay, try it now. Nope, nothing. I can see his mouth moving, you know. So unless he's just playing a practical joke, why I assume he's not. So we don't do those, I guess, in council meetings very often. So unless that can be immediately fixed, we'll go to Mr. Pyle.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. And wait a minute, Eric's sharing his screen, so maybe he can't talk, but he's going to show the vehicles. I don't know, maybe we can tag team this. I can't actually see this very well. Anyway, so what we've got going on here is we have 3 vehicles. These aren't off of the regular replacement list. These are replacements for vehicles that were wrecked during the year. And you'll notice that they're F-150 trucks instead of the Interceptors, although one of them was an F-150. The reason for this is as Ford is no longer making the Interceptor sedan, we really are moving the patrol portion of the fleet to 2 models, either the F-150 truck or a Ford SUV. So those are the reasons why it's an F-150 versus an Interceptor. The money is pretty much covered by the insurance money that we recouped after the vehicles were wrecked. So I believe the purchase cost might be, no, actually, I think we did recoup enough to actually cover the cost of them. So it's a net wash pretty close in terms of replacing the vehicles.
Okay. Eric, did you want to add anything? You see your back? And you're still no sound. So if you have something important to say, why don't you email us? Okay.
So I just have one question, Mayor.
Yes.
Why are we, if they're trucks for patrol, why are we doing long beds instead of just the short beds? Is there the same cost or?
I have no idea why they're long beds instead of short beds. I'm sure it has something to do with their desire for being able to park particular equipment in them, but Eric would have to answer that one.
Okay. Can he just email us if we don't get it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Hearing no further, then we'll go to the next resolution, 20-184. Approve the purchase of garbage cans from Waste Quip. And this looks like Mr. Willardson.
Okay, gotcha. I'll answer that. Thanks. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was just talking with Eric Madsen to get the answer to Councilwoman Lang's
tag
question.
team, great.
So they're not 8-foot beds. It's a long bed for that model, but it's a 6.5-foot bed. So it's not a full 8-foot bed. All right.
Thank you.
I'm supposed to be talking about garbage cans. So this resolution authorizes the purchase of 2 orders of garbage cans. What's happened is the price of the cans that we've been purchasing has gone up slightly. So it's been just below the city manager's authorized amount of $30,000, and it's just ticked over that a little bit to $31,000 and some change. I don't have my computer up here, and I won't take the time to bring it up here. But that's the reason for this resolution, is to authorize that purchase. We've been using automated cans since 1994. Some of them are getting very old, and we need to replace them as they break. And so this just authorizes us for 2 separate orders, so we can minimize our shipping costs. and get the maximum amount of cans on one load for 31,000, and then we'll have to make another order later in the year. But this authorization will authorize both of those purchases.
And you've purchased them before. We just haven't seen the purchases. So
That's correct.
this is just an ongoing expense.
It is, Mayor, yes.
So there's
Typically,
nothing-
typically the cans come with a 10 to 12-year warranty, and they've, our manufacturers have always honored that warranty, but once they're beyond that warranty period, then it's on us to replace them.
Well, and you do need to replace them at times. I've seen some where the lids were broken off. People are kind of rough on them sometimes.
Yes, they have a hard life.
Well, they take a lot of garbage, but they hold up pretty well.
I have a couple questions, Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
Are these green cans, blue cans, both?
They're the green cans, the regular garbage cans.
And just curious, because we haven't seen this before, is this like an annual purchase or semi-annual or every 5 years, or how often are you buying this many cans?
So typically, we order about 2 to 3 loads a year, depending. And that's what we're going to end up doing this year. It's between 2 and 3. Normally sometimes we can get by with 2, sometimes we have to get 3 loads a year. So we've already done 1, and this will be the 2nd and 3rd loads.
Russ, you mentioned that they have a life. Is there a point to where, if we've been doing this since '94, where there's a larger order? You have routine replacement just because people break them or whatever, or there's new people come on. But when you hit to that 10, 12, 15-year mark, are you expecting a lot, or a lot changed, or?
No, we've kind of passed that already. So we're kind of in a more steady replacement mode.
Yeah. Well, we're not very far away from a 20-year mark, so 4 years. So
Yeah, but we've been purchasing them all along. So they're spread out more than they were when we first bought them, for sure.
okay. Anything else, council? Hearing no further comments, we will move on to the next item on our agenda. Thank you, Mr. Willardson. You're on. Yeah, you just stay right there. We have communications, and we have a couple of them that we'll hear from Russ on. So the first one will be a strategic plan presentation for the Public Works Department.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our accomplishments for the last fiscal year. We'll go through quickly. I feel like we've been before you a lot recently. So we've talked about a lot of our capital projects and stormwater projects and other things. So I'll go through these slides and rather quickly. And if you have some questions, just stop me and I'll try to address them. So first of all, this is our department. We have 91 employees. Currently, we have those 6 major divisions that you see there: administration and utility billing, fleet, engineering, our operations and transportation, and basically work together, and facilities and sanitation, about a $23 million budget. Our administration and utility billing and sanitation divisions work closely together. We have 28,400 different accounts that we manage and bring in about $9.6 million every year. And we have a very good collection rate that we've been able to achieve. We work with Salt Lake County and to certify the debt when necessary. And it's been very successful for us in keeping up our reducing and minimizing our bad debt. You can see with, we had about 1,500 neighborhood dumpsters go out this year, and our work orders were down a little bit. You'll notice on some of the other slides too, our work orders are down. We've been obviously affected by COVID like everyone else. And although our employees are been designated as essential employees and have been working in the field for the most part, we just have a few in the engineering division who are working from home. Otherwise, everyone else is working their normal and from their normal workplace. But because of some COVID cases and quarantines, our numbers have been restricted a little bit, and our numbers are slightly down from what we normally do and accomplish.
Russ,
Yes, sir.
what about the dumpsters? They didn't go down. They more than doubled.
So there's a correction on that one, on that slide, Mayor, and maybe the one that we sent you had a mistake on it. The dumpsters last year were really 13.
I'm looking at the one, yes, that was originally there. The one
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
out on the internet.
Yeah, that one, that had a mistake on it. We just caught this afternoon. So it was 1,372. And those dumpsters are delivered by our contractor, ACE. And so they have not, I mean, they've been affected by COVID as well, but they just brought in additional people to meet that demand.
Okay, let's just make sure we get the updated information out on the website for when people
Sure.
go and look at it.
Yep. Next, Eric, please. So our operations division, we have 350 miles of road to maintain. We sweep the road, all the city streets 8 or 9 times a year. You can see on our storm drain maintenance, our numbers are down slightly, but we do clean our storm drains, our catch basins. What we typically do is we just send out an inspection crew on all the catch basins to see if they do need to be cleaned, so we don't have to send out our big heavy equipment. We just send a guy in a pickup truck to do that. Our snow plowing miles, those are really those numbers are a little bit hard to measure. We just measure how many miles we drive while we're plowing, not necessarily how many miles we plow. And then each year our program with our slurry seal program and our contracted slurry seals, our contracted seal coat projects, we resurface 1/6 of the city annually, which we were able to accomplish again this year. Street lighting, the biggest thing you notice on our street lighting is we are converting all of our existing high pressure sodium lamps over to LED lamps, and that work is all but finished. There's just a few things they need to follow up on, but that work is essentially completed now. And that is being paid for by the energy savings that we'll realize by converting those over to LED. Then we have 7,263 street signs that we maintain and 43 signals that we maintain. The city, we contract with Salt Lake County to do the maintenance on our traffic signals, but the street signs we do ourselves. Pavement markings we contract out as well. Our engineering division, we've completed several large projects this past year. Well, let me start up with the plan reviews. We had 344 project plans reviewed and 673 right-of-way permits, 44 stormwater permits. Those are all down slightly from last year. We completed the 2020 overlay project just south of City Hall here and west of 27th West. The Anna Caroline Drive Bridge, which is just west of Winco on 5600 West, is complete. We have a contract, a development on the north side of the road that is finishing that road and connecting it to 2400 South that UDOT has built with the Mountain View corridor. So by the next summer, we'll have that road open. So there'll be an alternative to using 5600 West there on the west side of Winco. The 2700 West improvement project is complete, which just here in front of City Hall that we've talked about multiple times. The project's in progress and under construction right now. 4100 South is mostly done. There's still some concrete sidewalk and concrete park strip being poured out there. The barrels are off the road most of the day, but occasionally they'll be back. Street trees will be planted next spring, but then we look forward to having that wide open with no orange barrels at all. 2540 South, which is one of the budget openings we talked about earlier, is under design right now, and we anticipate building that road this spring, which will connect 2540 South from its current terminus just east of 6400 West up to UDOT's new frontage road on the Mountain View corridor. So there will be another east-west road completed running between 5600 West and 7200 West. Then the projects coming up, we're working on a project with the Kearns Metro Township on 4700 South to reconstruct the road between 48th and 56th, and Crystal Avenue sidewalk, which is also a budget opening, setting some of the budget in place for that project. We have, as Jim mentioned, we have not started on that project yet. That's still in design, and we're working on the design of another segment of 2700 West from 4100 South to 4700 South on the west side. We were able to work with UTA to get a Tiger grant, transportation investment generating economic something is what Tiger stands for. So those are the projects that we're looking at next summer. All right, some of these things you're also aware of with the new engineering standards and the stormwater management plan that were adopted this summer. But our engineering division is also using the new permitting portal for all of our permits. This is the same portal that building inspection uses. So anyone needing a permit through the city can just do it all online, and it's working out well for us. Our facilities division has also had a busy year. They completed 2,846 work orders and have done a number of remodeling jobs here in City Hall. You can see some of their good work there. These guys are very able and produce really nice looking work. So the biggest project though is one that you're also familiar with, which is the completion of the Public Works Operations Building, which was completed earlier this fall. Yeah. And our fleet division. So we have completed approximately 12,465 jobs, not approximately, exactly. And we took care of 5,400 plus proactive repairs. So it's really an advantage to the city to have our own maintenance facility that's there and whenever we need them, 24/7 when it's snowing, and able to respond to the needs of not just the Public Works Department, but police and fire and the other departments as well. We brought in over $160,000 in revenue from outside agencies. These are agencies, other federal law enforcement agencies that are like to use our, we have a very good technician who installs lights and sirens and other emergency equipment, and they like the work he does, and they come back to us often. So we have about 445 vehicles that we maintain, and you can see all the services that we provide there. The only thing we really don't do is body work and transmission repairs. Other than that, we do pretty much everything in our shop. They also get involved in rebuilding and outfitting emergency equipment for the police department's command center and the mobile command power unit. They manage our fuel site now that we have our own fuel site on site, which is saving us thousands of dollars purchasing the fuel ourselves. And you can see some of our other outside customers there that use our services. That's all I have tonight. If I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council?
So how do we decide how to bill the outside service agencies for our services?
So we've actually calculated what our costs are. And we have applied an overhead rate to that. So we take into account our labor and the support labor and the cost of our facility. And then we have added an overhead rate to account for the cost of the building and other, just support services from the city. And then we compared that to, what outside, dealerships and others would charge. And we're still a little lower than them. We did increase it pretty dramatically. I think that was about a year ago we did that. And they're all still happy to come to us and pay that increased rate.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Russ, does
Hearing- Oh,
what
go
we
ahead.
do for other people, does it take away time that should be allotted to our fleet? Or do we have plenty of employees to be able to handle the outside and our own stuff?
So we've taken some steps to address that situation. We were getting behind, especially on upfitting vehicles. When we order a lot of vehicles at one time and they all arrive at the same time, it takes our technician about 4 days to complete a vehicle. So if we get 20 or 30 vehicles in at a time, then, and they're at the shop for a long time while they're being upfitted. So what Wayne authorized us to do was to hire a helper for him who can do some of the more mundane work, just assemble the wiring harnesses and prepare things for him so he can take care of the really technical part. But by doing that, we'll be able to bring in more revenue from the outside to cover the cost of that additional person and still keep up with our own in-house work.
Okay, since we went out and hired them special, we're definitely charging that to those outside agencies?
Yes, yes, they are being charged for all of that cost. And this assistant is not nearly as high paid. He's more like a stereo technician that would install your stereo in your car.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? If nothing further on their strategic plan presentation, we'll move to the next item, which is the Bangor Highway interchanges. Mr. Willardson.
Thank you, Mayor. So let me just introduce this real quick, and then I'll turn the time over to our consultant, Blake Ungerman from Avenue Consultants. Up until about 2 months ago, we believed that the environmental study for the Bangor Highway interchanges was several years in the future. As Councilman Christensen pointed out one night in council meeting, that he had heard that had been moved up, and I called UDOT to confirm that. And 2 weeks after that, it was a done deal. And UDOT had appropriated $8 million to do an environmental impact, a state environmental study, I should say, on all the remaining Bangor Highway interchanges. So Blake, can you pull up that next slide? So you can see all the ones in green are the ones in West Valley City and in Salt Lake City to the north of us. The two yellow ones or orange ones with the number 1 on them, 98 South and 4700 South, still remain to be done as well. And then 2 on the south end of the valley at 2700 West and 134th South. So UDOT has begun their RFP process to select a consultant to complete this study. The RFP went out on the street, I believe, either today or this week or possibly next. They anticipate getting responses back in January, the latter part of January, and in starting their work, or at least awarding a contract to a consultant for that $8 million environmental study in March. So what we assumed we would be way ahead of them a few months ago, we are just weeks ahead of them now. So we'll be moving forward with our study, and I've had lots of discussions with UDOT staff about this, and they're anxious to hear what our thoughts are and the results of our study, and incorporate that and evaluate that as they undertake this larger study. But I wanted to give you that background before I turn the time over to Blake. Are there any questions on UDOT's timetable or what they're doing?
I guess, Russ, my only question is, do we have time that our work on this is still worthwhile? We should continue with it. And in your discussions, is UDOT, I mean, are they potentially receptive? Are they interested? Are they just like, what are you guys doing it for?
No, they're very interested in what we're doing. I would say yes, we do have time to complete our study. It depends, obviously, on council's direction on how much we want to study. I mean, this is intended to be a high-level look at different options and a little more detail on two more specific alternatives, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, and get council's input on which ones those should be. But I think it is still very worthwhile that we go ahead and do this work so that we can, make that presentation and make the city's wishes known to UDOT. I mean, they're always willing to listen to us, but I think they are very appreciative of the fact that we're willing to take the time and to spend some money to take a hard look at this. Years ago on 4100 South in Bangor, UDOT had in mind a certain type of interchange, and we did a study at that time and convinced them to do something else, which is what they ultimately did. So, I think it is worthwhile, and I think we'll come up with some useful information to present to them. Let me just throw out a caveat here that. Obviously, there's a lot more detail that goes into this environmental study than what we're going to get into. And so it's possible that things could change, even if UDOT likes what the city recommends to them. For example, there's the utilities that may have to be relocated. There's a large aqueduct in the Bangor Highway right-of-way that, on previous projects, UDOT had to move. So those are some things that, are beyond the scope of our study, but might affect, definitely will affect what UDOT ultimately decides to do.
Okay, thank you.
Russ, you showed us this funding scenario here with all the green dots for this group that West Valley's in. Does that also imply that they will be done at the same time?
Mostly, yes. So UDOT's trying to get, they're trying to be prepared for what the legislature may do in terms of how much they bond for or whether they choose to bond or not. They told us that the other four interchanges are about $50 million a piece, and that the interchanges through West Valley and Salt Lake City are, I believe, was 300 million, maybe it was 4. But anyway, it's a big number. And depending on which option they choose, which concept they choose, some of the concepts would necessitate that all of them be built at the same time. Others would allow them to break it into different pieces. But regardless, even if they choose to do all of those at the same time, there would be traffic maintenance plans that would, allow traffic to still cross the streets. And, they certainly wouldn't just shut down all those interchanges all at the same time. But depending on, if a frontage road system is chosen, then they kind of have to build the frontage road for all of the interchanges at the same time.
Thank you.
All right, I think I'm done talking. I'll let Blake take it from here.
Thanks, Russ, and thanks, council, for inviting us today. Hopefully you can hear me all right. My mic-
Yes,
Okay.
and if you would introduce yourself, this is a record, and so, we need to have that permanently. So your
Yeah.
background and that you're the consultant, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So my name is Blake Ungren. I am with Avenue Consultants. I am the project manager for the consultants for this study. I'm a transportation planner and engineer, and have been doing this for, let's see, a little over 15 years now. These are the studies that I love to do, because we get to think about all the options that could potentially happen out there. And we're really excited to work with West Valley City on this and exhaust as many options as we possibly can. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Let me just, let's see, you can see, so I'm going to move on to the next slide here. Let me just briefly talk about the study process. This first stage here is identifying options, and this is where we are at today. So we're at the beginning of our process. Like Russ said, we kind of have a tight timeline, but even with that, we're still at the beginning of the process. We're, in talking with Russ and his staff, we want to involve the council early on and often throughout this process. And so we'll be back in touch with you at these next stages as well, when we evaluate traffic and develop high-level layouts of the concepts that we're looking at. So this is a map of the study area. From our study area is 4100 south up to SR 201. This map, north is to the right. You see a little north arrow up here on the upper right-hand corner. 4100 south is on the left here, and it extends all the way up to 201 on the right. And we will be looking at maps like with similar orientation throughout this process. And so just know that when we're looking at maps, it's going to be north is going to be to the right. You can see here currently that there are several connections to Bangerter Highway today in this area, which will be important to our discussion a little bit later on. So please take note of that, this connection to and from Bangerter Highway. So recognizing that UDOT ultimately is going to make a decision on Bangerter Highway, what concept is carried forward, our project objective, as we talk this over with the city staff, is to evaluate options to provide recommendations to UDOT for the best balance between impacts and mobility for West Valley City. And let's really quickly discuss what impacts and mobility really mean here. In this case, we're talking about impacts that potentially affect businesses, front and backyard landscaping, community assets, right-of-way, including strip, partial strip acquisitions, and then full-blown acquisitions, visual impacts as well, noise and environmental impacts. And all of these things represent the impacts that these kind of projects have in a given area. And then when we talk about mobility, we're talking about how easy it is to get around. And specifically with two things in mind. Number one is connectivity. How well do we maintain access to and from Bangerter Highway? And then the second is how well do we deal with traffic congestion, not only on Bangerter Highway, but the east-west side street congestion. So both of those we're going to be looking at. And these few items here, we're going to be talking about a little bit later on as it relates to the options that we're looking at. And even though UDOT will make the decision, UDOT does have, like Russ was saying, UDOT has a good track record of working with and listening to West Valley City when it comes to this stuff, to the staff specifically. And I believe that they view West Valley City as a stakeholder, and this information will hopefully be helpful to the city in coordination with UDOT during this process. So a little background, UDOT's going to solve the traffic problem out there. So I wanted to show you where Bangerter traffic is today and where it will be in the future, specifically what traffic volumes we are going to need to work with for this study. Current traffic capacity on Bangerter Highway is approximately 63,000 vehicles per day, as you can see on this chart. The numbers on the right of this chart going up represent the average traffic volumes per day. The numbers across the bottom represent years. 1990 on the left there in the past, if we can remember the back that far, 30 years. 2020 here in the middle, that's today, and our horizon year, which is 2050 on the right. So that's what we're looking forward to and planning for, is 2050. So over the past 30 years, traffic has grown on Bangerter Highway, and we are now over capacity. We are at an over capacity on Bangerter Highway. That little dot there right in the center is where the traffic volumes are. And in the next 30 years, traffic is projected to move to more than double in volume, as shown with this range in the orange. And it's a range because we're predicting the future here, but we use our traffic models to do that and standards of practice to do that. So this is the range we're looking at. And this level of traffic that we're showing here in the future in 2050 warrants grade separation on Bangerter Highway. And that's something that I wanted to make pretty clear here, is that that's something we have to deal with, and it's the reality of the situation. And it's going to be an important part of the solution as we talk about it today here with the City Council. And we will discuss that specifically as we go through the options that we want to discuss with you. So what I'd like to do now is just jump into the options that we have brainstormed as a consultant group and then with the city staff. And I'm going to describe the options and discuss, excuse me, some of their advantages and disadvantages. We will also discuss a preliminary high-level evaluation that we performed to help us understand how these options compare one to another. And as we are doing this, there are three purposes for this discussion, and I want to take you through those. The first is seeking to understand the potential options. As we are going through these options, we want to know if you, the City Council, have any questions to help you understand the nuances associated with these potential options. The second is identifying benefits or concerns. We also want to understand what you feel are the potential benefits or concerns with each option. And the third, and this is going to be important to this discussion, is selecting options for further evaluation. We would like to leave this work session here with a couple options that we can carry forward into a more detailed evaluation. And that's going to be important specifically with regard to the kind of crunch time frame that we have to get this done in a little bit faster pace. We have 9 options that we want to cover with you today. And to do this efficiently, as we are going through these options, I would like you to write down your questions and thoughts based on these 3 purposes for a couple reasons. Number one, I want to make sure we have time to get through all the options. And number 2, some of your questions might be answered as we progress through the options. And so as we go through these options, please make note of your questions. And then when we get to the end, let's talk about those questions and concerns and also benefits that you have associated with these options. Any questions before I move on and get into these options? Okay. So one more thing to note before we start. As we have been looking into these options, we have been comparing them one to another so we can better understand how they perform relative to each other. And we have done this by performing a high level evaluation of the project objectives we discussed earlier, which is typical for a study like this. And let me explain how we did this. So here are the objectives, and we looked at how well an option avoids impacts to the surrounding environment based on number of interchanges, assumed widths of those options, right-of-way, noise, visual impacts, and so forth. Again, a high-level look at that. We've also looked at how well an option does at providing connectivity or access to and from Bangerter. And if you recall, earlier we talked about all those access points on Bangerter Highway today. So how well do these options maintain that similar style access to and from Bangerter? And then finally, we utilize the travel demand model, which is some traffic software that helps us predict how traffic patterns change with these options and how that change affects congestion. So that information from the travel demand model was used to help us understand how these options reduce congestion on side streets. So that's that little icon there with the traffic light, And then also as well as how they reduce congestion on Bangor Highway. That's the little icon there with the vehicles. And so these are the objectives that we're looking at as we go through these. And as I mentioned earlier, these comparisons are relative to each other. So based on the evaluation, each objective was given one of 3 scores based on how they compared to the other options. So there was the lowest, the middle, and the highest. So let's say if the connectivity objective for a specific option shows the lowest, then that option is one of the lowest at prioritizing connectivity when compared to the other options, if that makes sense. So that's how we're kind of comparing these one to another. And finally, as we go through each of these options, you will see our high-level evaluation summarized in this table format here, which will help us understand how each option is performing compared to the other options. And again, just going back to what Russ said earlier, one caveat on these options is there are a lot of unknowns that can significantly influence the final option that UDOT selects and how they design it. For example, like Russ said, there's that Jordan Valley Aqueduct that runs down the center of Bangor Highway from the southern end of our project limits to somewhere between 3100 South and Parkway Boulevard. And this is a 60-inch pipeline that has at least 50 foot of easement that currently overlaps Bangor Highway and does not allow for any structures. And this type of facility could greatly affect any of these options in ways that we cannot predict or plan for as part of this study. So this constraint, along with other unknowns, could definitely influence UDOT's environmental study and ultimately influence how these options are designed and implemented. So just wanted to reiterate that. But now I wanted to get into these options and talk them over with you. So option 1 here is a 6-lane freeway. Again, north is to the right. And this blue line with the little gray line down the middle represents the freeway. We're looking at interchanges at 4100 South, 3500 South, Parkway Boulevard, and SR 201. And you can see, and those are grade separated interchanges that we're talking about. And you can see that they're relatively even spaced, and they're spaced approximately out a mile apiece. And that's typical for interchanges. When UDOT implements interchanges, typically a mile spacing is what they do. And it's partially because the ramps on and off the freeways we try to avoid interacting ramps on and off the freeways with each other at adjacent interchanges. And if they get closer than that, a lot of times those ramps will conflict and there will be issues with that. So some of the advantages, I want to talk about advantages and disadvantages with these options. So this is a 6-lane freeway from 4100 South up to 201 with these interchanges where we said it likely, compared to the other options, it has the fewest number of impacts because it has the smallest cross-section width. But some of the disadvantages here is that there's no connectivity to 3100 South here that currently has connection, 2400 South and the frontage road here. And so that's a disadvantage. And then not only that, but it may not accommodate future traffic projections, which is kind of interesting as a 6-lane freeway is concerned. So as we compare this option to others, we go back to what I was talking about earlier. This option has the highest, it's the highest at avoiding impacts. So it's the best at avoiding impacts compared to the other options. However, it's the lowest at providing connectivity to and from Bangor. And it's the lowest at reducing congestion on the side streets. So when we ran that in our models, there was a lot of excessive congestion on the side streets, on West Valley City surface streets. And then finally, it's kind of middle of the line at reducing congestion on Bangor Highway. So it compared to the other options, it's middle of the line. So as we move on to option 2, it's similar to option 1. It's a 6-lane freeway, again, from 4100 South all the way up to SR 201. And interchanges are in the same locations that we had previously, but what we're doing here is we're introducing auxiliary lanes. And those are the lanes that begin and end at the interchanges. So for example, if you're getting on northbound at 3500 South, the auxiliary lane would pick up at 3500 South and then it would end at Parkway Boulevard interchange. And so that's what auxiliary lanes do. They don't actually, that lane does not run through the interchange. It just begins and ends at the interchanges. And that provides additional capacity to Bangor Highway. However, there's still no connectivity to 3100 South, 2400 South and frontage. And it still may not accommodate traffic projections. We were trying to see if maybe if we put in some auxiliary lanes, that could do the trick. It doesn't quite do the trick still. So if we take a comparative look at that compared to the other options, this is about the middle at avoiding impacts, which is a little bit more impacts to the surrounding environment from compared to the 6-lane freeway, because we add additional width to the freeway system because of those auxiliary lanes. So it's 6 lanes plus these additional auxiliary lanes. It's the lowest at providing connectivity to and from Bangor Highway, the lowest at reducing congestion on the same street. It's got that same condition that we see in the 6-lane freeway. And then it's middle of the line for reducing congestion on Bangor. It didn't move the needle much at reducing congestion on Bangor. Auxiliary lanes also are something that they're a feature that are added to freeways when additional capacity is needed in segments along the freeway. So you may still see, if a freeway is implemented, you may still see a auxiliary lane, for example, between 201 and Parkway Boulevard. And that's the only place you see an auxiliary lane. That's just an example, it's hypothetical, but that's what auxiliary lanes are used for a lot of the time. This option 3A, we're calling the commuter lanes option. We call it 3A because there's a secondary option associated with this. This is a 4-lane commuter lane and a 4-lane frontage road system. And you see here on the south end from 4100 South to 3500 South, we still have this 6-lane freeway right here. We have an interchange at 4100 South and at 3500 South. But then when you get north of 3500 South, there's no interchanges up to SR 201. And what we do here is we split this into a commuter lane, which would be these blue lines, these dark blue lines on the outside here, 2 lanes in each direction, where it would be like a freeway with no interchanges between, or no way on and off between 35th South and SR 201, a commuter lane between those two points. And then this light blue line here represents a frontage road that would provide connection to the frontage road, to 2400 South, to Parkway Boulevard, and to 3100 South. And so that would improve connectivity in the area beyond what we saw with the freeway system. And so what that does is the advantage is it's a smaller footprint when compared to a larger frontage road system, because you don't have the slip ramps on and off. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And it also provides side street connectivity to the frontage road system. However, the disadvantages are there's no connectivity between the frontage road system and this commuter lanes. So if you're on this frontage road, you would have to go down to 35th South or go up to 201 to get onto the commuter lanes, to go north or south down on commuter lanes, and then also to get on the freeway. So that's one of the issues there. This in particular has the worst projected congestion out of all of our concepts. Another disadvantage of that, and that's primarily due to the number of commuter lanes. Four-lane commuter lanes is just not enough, and that may not ultimately accommodate traffic projections. So when we compare this option to the other options, it's on the lower end of avoiding impacts. So it's got a wider section here. We have 8 total lanes here, so you're likely going to see more impacts. It's middle of the line for providing connectivity, because we do have side street connectivity, but there's no connectivity to the commuter lanes itself. It's the highest at reducing congestion, so it does a good job of reducing congestion on the side streets, and that's because of that connectivity to the side streets at several locations along this segment here. But it is the lowest at reducing congestion on Bangor. It has the worst operations. So with that in mind, we thought, well, what if we added another lane both directions to these commuter lanes? What would that do to the operations? And so this is the exact same option we just talked about, The difference here is that it has 6 lanes for the commuter lane, 3 in each direction instead of 2 in each direction. And you see here that it's got a wider footprint, so it's going to have more impacts than the previous. But now we have more capacity out there. And what that does is, again, it's the lowest at avoiding impact. So there's more impact than we saw previously. It's middle of the line for providing connectivity to this area. But it's the highest for reducing congestion like we saw on the side street before. It's also the highest at reducing congestion on Bangor Highway. So it actually potentially operates better than some of the other options, and it operates in that kind of the best range. Option 4 is a freeway system like we saw, just that 6-lane freeway system like option 1 we saw at the very beginning, but it's providing what we call a center change at 3100 South. And the reason why we looked at a center change is because if you put a full interchange at 3100 South with ramps on the sides, the ramps on the sides of the freeway would conflict with the ramps at Parkway Boulevard interchange at 35th South interchange. So we thought, what if you did a center ramp for this interchange? What that does is it provides a connection at 3100 South, which is great. We didn't have that before with the 6-lane freeway, but it doesn't provide connections still at 24th South and at the frontage road. And it may still not meet the traffic need that's out there. Also, center on and off ramps don't necessarily meet driver expectancy, which means drivers aren't really anticipating getting off on those center lanes. So typically when we're driving down the freeway, we expect to get off to the right. When you have ramps to the left, it's a little bit more difficult for drivers to anticipate. And additionally, UDOT typically doesn't like these kind of interchanges. So it would be unlikely for UDOT to approve something like this. And when we compare this to the other options, it's middle of the line for avoiding impacts because we add an additional interchange at 3100 South, and at providing connectivity. Again, we still don't have connectivity at 24th South or at the frontage road, and so it's middle of the line. And then congestion on the side streets in Bangor is about middle of the line as well, because we add a connection to 3100 South, but there's still no connectivity north of Parkway Boulevard, and that really causes congestion on those side streets. And then again, Bangor could use additional capacity for that. So option 5 is a 6-lane freeway frontage road system between 35th South and Parkway Boulevard. Again, just seeing what we can do for connectivity. It provides a connection here. These light blue lines here represent the frontage road. This is that 6-lane freeway running down the middle here. These orange arrows represent slip ramps on and off the frontage road system. And then this is that connection road here with some intersections at 3100 South. It provides connection at 3100 South, but still no connectivity up here on the north end to 2400 South and to the frontage road, and it may not meet traffic need out there. This does a middle of the line job at avoiding impact, so there's still more impact than the standard freeway. It provides connectivity middle of the line because we're adding that connection to 3100 South, but not up at 2400 South or frontage road. And it's going to have the same congestion issues that center change had because we don't have those connections up at the 2400 South or frontage road. So we have side street congestion, and then also congestion on Bangor Highway because we just don't have enough capacity there. So the next step would be to look at frontage road system all the way up to SR 201. What that does is it replaces an interchange at Parkway Boulevard with a frontage road intersection, which actually potentially reduces that footprint out there. This option here actually potentially meets the traffic need that's out there. And it's also got great connectivity to all the side streets. So you can see here that we have connections to the frontage road, to 2400 South, to Parkway Boulevard and 3100 South. And these orange lines again represent the slip ramps. So we have slip ramps potentially in several locations along this segment that can get people from the frontage roads, which are these light blue lines, to the freeway system, which is that dark blue line. So really good connectivity with this one. However, there's more impacts due to the slip ramps. Those slip ramps need a little bit more space to be wider. And it requires 2 intersections at these, oops, sorry, I was clicking on it. requires 2 intersections at these frontage roads intersections. So one on each side of the freeway, which, you know, adds some complexity to the operation, but is still doable. So when we look at the comparison to others, it is the lowest at avoiding impacts. So it has more impacts than other options that we're looking at. But when it comes to connectivity and congestion, it's the highest. It does the best job at improving connectivity. We have the best connectivity out there for this area, and then improves the congestion, has the best opportunity to avoid congestion in this area. Option 7 is similar to this one, but we move this light blue line from the outside here to the inside. So it becomes a center running frontage road as opposed to an outside running frontage road. And what that does for us, it's got the same configuration with an interchange at 35th and 201, so no interchange or grade separation at Parkway Boulevard. But what it does is it takes those 2 intersections at this option here, and it consolidates it into a single intersection. And that single intersection will operate a little bit more efficiently than 2 separate intersections. It potentially meets the traffic need. It's great connectivity to all side streets, and then that single intersections. However, again, it's got more impact due to the nature of the cross section, plus these slip ramps here, that there is these slip ramps that actually add some widening to it. The other issue is that we saw was that there's no buffer between the freeway here, which is this dark blue line, and adjacent properties. With this previous option, you have this buffer of a frontage road between the freeway and these adjacent properties. And so that we saw was a disadvantage for this one. However, it has the same, when you compare it to the others, it's the same level of comparison as the 6-lane freeway with the outside running frontage road, where we have higher impacts, but which is the lowest at avoiding impacts, but does a great job of providing connectivity and reducing congestion, both on the side streets and on Bangerter Highway. And our last option here, and I know I'm going through this fairly quickly. I know we don't have a ton of time, but again, exhausting as many options as we can. This is an option, a double-decker freeway option, where we were looking at putting the freeway overhead and the frontage road at grade. So the frontage road underneath, which is this light blue line, would run the length from 3500 South to SR 201, would have the connection to the frontage road, 2400 South, Parkway Boulevard, and 3100 South. And then we would run the overhead would be the freeway system. So 3 lanes in each direction. It would run over the top of that frontage road. And what that does is it provides a smaller horizontal footprint. It provides side street connectivity to the frontage road. Now, we don't have connection to the freeway system in this area, but we do have connection to the frontage road, which provides better connectivity than just the freeway. Now, the disadvantage is this is something that's extremely costly to construct because of the structures that we would have to incorporate for 2 miles of the roadway. The other issue is there's major visual impacts associated with this for this entire length from 35th South to 201. The view shed is an important feature for a lot of residents and businesses. And so this could potentially impact that view shed of the surrounding environment. And it may not actually meet the traffic need that we see out there. And it may be difficult for UDOT to approve something like this as we move forward. So as we look at it, impacts don't just mean the footprint that we're looking at, but it also, again, like we talked about, we're looking at visual impacts and other impacts. This one, because of that visual impact, we associated this as being one of the lowest at avoiding impacts because of that visual nature. It also doesn't do well at providing connectivity because of the roadway, similar to the other ones that we saw like this. It also has a lot of congestion on the side streets, what we found as we were modeling this. And then when we looked at Bangerter Highway, it was about middle of the line for Bangerter Highway. So a lot of low end for this option, kind of on the lower side of all the options when it comes to our objectives. So what we did was we took all of that information, and in your packet, you'd see this. This is all of that information combined into one table with all of the options described off to the left. One of our objectives here is avoiding impacts here. providing connectivity here in this second column, reducing congestion on side streets in the third column, and reducing congestion on Bangor Highway in the fourth column. And what we noticed was there's a lot of options here. It's hard to look through all this, but we thought, you know what, we could probably consolidate some of these options. For instance, the 6-lane freeway is similar to the 6-lane freeway option with the auxiliary lanes is similar to the 6-lane freeway. Again, the auxiliary lanes could be a piece or part that could be added to the freeway system. So we thought we could consolidate those two. Option 3 and 3B are similar to each other, just different number of lanes. And 3A didn't meet it was the lowest at meeting the congestion on Bangor Highway. And so we thought we could consolidate those two. And then 4A and 4B, oh, and I didn't even mention 4A. So 4A was a center change option, but instead of having left turns, you just do right on, right off. And so we thought we could consolidate those into just one interchange option there. So when you look at that, it's a little bit more manageable to look at. But ultimately what we wanted to do now with you guys, with the city council, is to now understand if there's anything else that you guys would like to talk about with regard to these options, if you have any questions. And then do you see any potential benefits and or concerns associated with these options that we're showing here? And then ultimately, at the end of our conversation, I'd like to select a couple options that we can carry forward into our more detailed analysis. And I have Ivan Hooper on the line. He's our resident traffic engineer guru, and Derek LaHoosen, our designer, online. They're going to be helping me answer some of the questions that you have as we go through this. So I'm going to open it up to questions now to the city council.
Mayor, may I?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
I don't know who else was speaking there.
It was me. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Don. So just some questions as we go through this, looking at the various options. It looks to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that 3500 south to 4100 south is basically the same in every option. Is that correct?
So between 30, your question is between 3500 south and
4100 south.
or 4100 south. Is it the same in each option? Yeah, it's essentially the same. I mean, there is a little bit of variation with the if we go back here, council member, this is, there's potential for auxiliary lanes in those areas. So that would be.
But other than that option, I think they're all basically, it's going to be this way during that mile stretch.
Yeah, potentially.
Was any consideration or planning taken for pedestrian traffic over the freeways? We have a pedestrian overpass at 4100 and 3100. We have heavily used crosswalks at 3500 right next to the high school there. Were pedestrian bridges included in the analysis and the cost and the impacts?
Yeah, Councilmember Bueller, that's a really great question. We haven't got to that level of detail yet. When we look, and we've kind of took a high level look at those things, which is associated with the impacts and connectivity. But when we get into the more detailed analysis, those are some of the things that we'll be looking at and addressing.
Okay, well, I just, if it's going to be the same options 1 through 8, I guess it doesn't matter. But if it's going to be affected, it factors into what option we would propose. So if you put a pin in that and hold on to that thought. As I look at the various illustrations, it looks like the assumption is that the takings to expand the right-of-way will be equal east and west, but of course they may not be. As further south on Bangor, sometimes they would stay with the boundary of Bangor on one side and just expand to the east or the west. Is any evaluation or recommendation being considered for which side of the road to take in one area or another?
Yeah, Councilmember, that's another great question. We will be looking into that, and like Russ mentioned earlier, we are going to be taking a higher level look at a horizontal layout of whatever concept we move forward with. Some of those features that you're talking about might be influenced by not only what's out there, but what's out there that we can see, but what's out there that we can't see.
Sure.
You know, like the aqueduct, like other underground utilities and other features that might be out there. But to kind of answer your point, it's something that we want to look at. And if you have any thoughts associated with what's important out there to you, we'll want to kind of look into that in more detail as we get
Well,
into this.
yeah, I think as a kind of a general thought, taking one house, I mean, a whole row of houses on one side is probably preferable to taking the backyard of houses on both sides. But again, I'm, not looking at it house by house or making a recommendation there. My next question is, when you consider cost, I mean, you said some of these projects are more costly than others. Was the cost of acquisition included in that evaluation? We're just talking about building cost, because if you have to buy more right of way and you're paying for all of these houses at however much per house, that of course factors into the project because we're not building it out in the open somewhere.
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually didn't factor in cost into this. I did mention cost for one of the options for that double-decker option because, of the nature of the structure. Other than that, we have not looked at cost on any of these yet. It's something that we've been talking about potentially looking at, but with us being with our study being on the heels of this environmental study, we weren't sure if that was something that would be worthwhile to the city council to know at this point. So it's something we could talk about and determine whether or not we need to look at those things.
It's got to factor into UDOT's consideration if they're going to, go a mile wide because they can build something cheaper. I mean, they just are building the Mountain View corridor through there, and they've gone really wide and paid a lot of money for a lot of houses. They may want to be doing that again or not, but I think that is a factor. And if we're making a recommendation, we ought to be cognizant, if not include that in our recommendation. The next comment that I have is that to me, the impacts, as far as the impact to the city, is much greater taking out a row of houses than imposing on businesses or other areas. I think businesses are able to better recoup their losses, take their money, do something different than homeowners that are forced out of their homes, neighborhoods that are impacted by losing a street of homes. And for me, the impact north of Parkway for a wider or a higher right-of-way is much less significant than the impact south of Parkway. And I would even say probably the impact between 3100 and 4100 is greater because it's just more of a residential area than the southern part of the road. So that's my 2 cents on that. The other thing is on several of these, we're talking about, we were losing an interchange at 3100, 2400, the frontage road. Have we looked at or considered having east-west overpasses that, although we don't have an interchange, we're freeing up traffic to travel east and west because we're building an overpass. 3100 south is going over the freeway.
So just so I understand your question, when we have situations like this where the freeway is coming through at 3100 south and at 2400 south and at frontage, are we anticipating these to connect underneath like an overpass with not an interchange? Would we be
right? So we can still move traffic on 3100. It's just not connecting to Bangor Highway.
Yeah. So that's a great question, Councilmember. We did anticipate that these would be overpasses. That's a great clarification to this presentation. Is that
okay? So it's an overpass, the freeway over 3100. We're just not connection. Okay, good.
Yeah, over under whatever worked, but definitely east-west connectivity through there, just no connection to Bangor, to and from Bangor. So
okay, because I don't know that we have to have all those connections, but we certainly want to be able to move east and west, which is something I don't think UDOT thinks is very important sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, council member. Those are great questions.
Mayor, I had a couple of questions. Looking at it, as Councilman Bueller said, 4,100 to 3,500. What's the difference in traffic volume between north of 3,500 and south of 3,500?
That's a good question. And so the interesting thing about this, council member, is that there's no cross street connection between 3,500 South and 4,100 South.
That's right.
So that's why all the variation you see is north of 3,500 South, is because we're trying to figure out ways to provide that connection, which ultimately those connections reduce congestion on side streets and also provides better connectivity to Bangerter Highway. But the trade-off is that you potentially have more impact. So more connections potentially have more impact.
But north of 3,500, there's no connection to Bangerter except at the major interchanges that are noted on there. There's no side street connection, same as between 41 and 35. I'm worried about, if we free up traffic north of 35, what about the traffic south of 35 that now backs up between 35 and 4,100?
Our models are suggesting that, and we're going to dig into this deeper once we have some more information on which direction to move forward with. But our traffic models suggest that if we were to put in this frontage road system, this option 7 here, that it would, or option 6, that it would actually accommodate the potentially accommodate the need for traffic on Bangerter Highway, which suggests that between 4,100 South and 3,500 South, that we have the capacity that's needed out there with that. But we have to dive into more detail with that to understand it better. We're still at a high level trying to understand this from a higher level. So we'll be able to get back to you on that a little bit in more detail at our next meeting.
Well, as I drive 4,500, or as I drive Bangerter, I don't see that much difference in backing up other than the 201 interchange. That's where everything backs up. And that's where the traffic stops as I drive along Bangerter, both north and south, during the day, any time of the day.
Yeah, 201, SR 201 is a major contributor to congestion out there for sure. So as traffic volumes grow out there, we're going to see more congestion everywhere. So
it's called a cork in the bottle.
Yeah.
But freeing up between 35 and 201 won't help if we don't take care of 201, and it doesn't. And if 41 to 35 isn't backed up, there's not that much traffic that comes on at 35. As I see it.
Yeah, it's really
I'm only the one that uses it.
Yeah, and it's really the connections to those side streets that we're trying to worry about here with these options. So,
if I could jump in just for a second, Mayor. What our goal is tonight is to try and select 2 or 3 of these options to study further, and then we'll be able to answer more of those in-depth questions about the footprints and the traffic. That's our next 2 steps, is to look at the traffic congestion. We've taken a high level look at it now, and the next step would be to apply the traffic to these actual concepts or these alternatives, and then finally to do actual layouts, horizontal layouts of how wide would it need to be, how many homes would be impacted.
So for me,
Okay.
I need a better
Go ahead.
explanation of why we don't have on and off ramps at 31. I'm pretty sure people are more creative than they're giving themselves credit for. And Parkway Boulevard. Those are 2. 31 has so much traffic going to Walmart, and then Parkway once you finish out the housing in Lake Park and the businesses, it's overwhelming. And I think you're going to put more pressure on side streets of the 4800 that goes into Lake Park, 36 and 32 that go on to 31. I think those are going to be so congested. People are not going to use the frontage roads, I don't think, as much as you think they will. I really need a more defined answer of why we can't be creative and find something have an interchange on 31 and Parkway.
Yeah, that's a great question. Russ, were you going to say something? I wasn't sure if you were about to jump in there.
Well, I mean, Councilwoman, it's the proximity. I mean, typically, UDOT interchanges on a freeway system are spaced a mile apart. And then because north of 35th South, they're every half mile or even closer when you get down to the frontage road. That's the problem, is the ramps, the exit ramps and the on ramps, would have to overlap, and I mean, that's what creates the problem. I mean, we've all driven on 215 to go eastbound, or northbound 215 to eastbound 201, and seen how short that merge section is there, and that's only a half a mile between 215 and Redwood Road. So that's the reason UDOT doesn't like to do those kind of things. And that's why we've looked at these other concepts that could use frontage roads to, provide access at all of those cross streets. Because personally, I agree with you. I think maintaining access at those cross streets is very important, but it comes with a price. With the impacts.
You make it so that your on-ramps, you come on in the center of the road and you get off on the right of the road like you're used to, because when you're getting on, I don't think you're not at a high speed, and you're not as, bound to miss your entrance as you are to miss your exit if it's a left exit instead of a right exit. But where you're having an interchange and you just have to get on the frontage road, then you can get on 3100 or Parkway. That may be the best that we can do. We can't have the ramp just going on and off, and you don't have a chance to merge over because all the interchanges are so close.
Well, on 4th South, you get off on the left-hand side instead of the right-hand side. I mean, if there's a sign saying exit is here on the left hand or the right hand, I think people can do it. I've seen it other places.
Yeah, on 5th South in Bountiful on southbound I-15. And
Yeah,
of course, when they did downtown, they took, it used to be 5th South, you'd get on all 4 freeways, and then they took one and moved it to 4th South. So that I think it's the northbound is on 4th South instead of, no, it's the southbound.
Oh.
Or the west.
Yeah.
People do get used to it.
Right. And that's just it. I mean, if they're creative and we have center and off ramps on the outside, I think that would be the best solution for them. And then they would work better. The other thing is, if UDOT is already at the environmental stage, do they already have a plan, and have we been presented that plan?
No, they don't. They haven't studied they have not begun their study yet.
Okay, so they don't have a definite plan. So when are we thinking they'll do the environmental study?
They're going to begin in March.
And they begin that without a solid plan?
Well, what happens in the environmental study, they'll start right where we have started. They'll take a look at traffic projections. First of all, they'll look at different alternatives, and then they'll choose, alternatives and start screening those out, and then eventually come to what they, recommend. But that will be a several-year process before they get to the end.
I would like to see how it would work out with the off ramps being staggered either in the middle and, getting off in the middle, getting on the sides.
So
Before I come up with a definite, oh yeah, this is the one I love, because I personally don't love any of these.
So one thing I don't know if this will help, council member, but with the frontage road, these orange lines represent on and off ramps, and they can be configured how, we're just kind of representing where the on and off ramps would occur. But with a frontage road system, you'll have more opportunity to have on and off ramps from the frontage road. It's a slip ramp. So if you're on Parkway Boulevard and you want to go north to 201, you'd take a right and then you'd get on this slip ramp that would get you onto the freeway and head down. So you don't have a full interchange there, but you have an on and off ramp. If you're coming southbound, you'd be able to get off and then, you know, turn left and come down Parkway Boulevard if you'd like to go east on Parkway Boulevard. But we'd have slip ramps between 35th and 31, and then between 31 and Parkway, and then between Parkway and 24th. So there's these frontage road systems provide better opportunity for getting on and off without having to have full interchanges at all of these intersections, which may be difficult for the DOT to implement. They might have a hard time implementing something like that. But this option here still provides that connectivity to the freeway system, like you're kind of suggesting you'd need around these areas. And that's one of the reasons why our models are predicting that this option is going to have the highest opportunity at reducing congestion on the side street and on Bangerter itself. So because of that connections, because of those convenient connections.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, because I was not understanding what your slip ramps even meant.
Yeah,
So,
I was kind of wondering.
and it's your lingo, not mine, so I don't understand. So thank you
I
for.
apologize for that. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
You know, if I might, this Mayor Bigelow, to move this forward a little bit, I think we can give some direction. If you would, and council, speak up to this, but to move it forward, I recommend that we eliminate immediately from consideration item 8, the option 8. Just get rid of that. I don't think any of us want a double decker there. That's out.
I think 8 and 1 as well.
Okay, the second one I recommend is 1.
I think that some version of 3 or 6 seems to be the most favorable, but we need to consider the other things, you know, pedestrians.
Yeah.
Can we get, you know, our traffic flow on these other streets? We didn't come through and build Bangerter Highway with interchanges at 2400 Parkway, 31. I mean, the state did that, and it's their bed. They got to lie in it somehow, but we have people that rely on those roads.
Yeah.
So I would conversion of 3 and 6.
Yeah, with that
So-
added information, I would go with number 6 as well. And thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
6 is high on my list as well. But I would, I do have a concern, and that is, it's a given that there's going to be an interchange at 201 and at 30, or excuse me, at 41st. Okay, those are at the two ends. So questions arise. We will absolutely have one at 35th. That's a state road. That's a main highway across the valley. That's a given. I would add to that the minimum, we should have an interchange also at Parkway Boulevard. Under no circumstances, under no consideration, should we have less than an interchange every mile. We then use these concepts of center lanes, you know, on and off, frontage road, to draw in 3100 south, 2400 south in the frontage road. Does that narrow it enough that you can work with that? And Russ, I need you to hop on and give us some feedback here.
Yeah, I think it does, Mayor. We can take a look at those options, number 6, and then some combination of 3A and 3B, or yeah, we can do that.
Council, are you comfortable with having an absolute minimum of those 4 interchanges? 41st, 35th, Parkway, 201. that under no circumstances do we have less than that.
I'm comfortable with that, Mayor.
I'm okay with that.
Here's the cog in the wheel. Now that he's explained the slip ramps,
Yes.
I almost think that having those would help our east-west move faster. And I'm not sure we don't want that on 35th and not have the too many lights and the congestion on 35th. But that's just me having a very small understanding of what the slip ramps are. Because
Yeah,
I still worry about the east-west on 3500.
yeah, council member, we're gonna dig into those details in this next step, the operations. We're gonna get into our traffic models in more detail and understand it at a closer level. And so we'll have better ideas of what to do at 35th, what to do at Parkway Boulevard. Because Mayor, I appreciate your thought on these interchanges. That's really important to understand, that interchanges are important to your city. This option here with the frontage roads kind of lends itself to not having an interchange at Parkway Boulevard because it has the slip ramps, these orange lines here, to get on and off the freeway immediately adjacent to Parkway Boulevard. So they almost act as an interchange without having the heavy footprint that you have of an interchange at Parkway Boulevard. And so you still have good connectivity on and off the freeway. You go a little bit differently than you would a normal interchange and still provide good connectivity and good options for people out there as they're driving around. Does that make sense? Is why we
Well,
Yeah.
okay, the slip ramps. So at Parkway, they go where?
So if you're at Parkway here, so we have slip ramps on the north side of Parkway and the south side of Parkway. And
Okay.
typically these frontage roads are a one-way system here. So if you wanted to go southbound, you'd be on the west side. If you want to go northbound, you'd be on the east side. So you'd get off here to get to Parkway, you'd get on here to get back on the freeway. And then if you wanted to go south, you would drive underneath here and you'd go south on Parkway, and then you get on the slip, or you go south on the frontage and you get on the slip ramp to go south on the freeway.
Okay, look at 2400 South. What do you have there?
Yeah, so 2400 South is and the frontage are interesting because they are so close to 201 that when you have an interchange like 201, these ramps are likely going to extend down to this area. And so what you would have to do at the frontage here is you'd have to come down to Parkway to get on the freeway, or you'd have to just take the frontage road up to where you want to go. And so the frontage road provides that connectivity, but doesn't impact like the interaction of all the ramps that are associated with some of these larger interchanges. So it's kind of this, it's a give and take as to, if we want to have good operations at SR 201 and Bangerter, we're going to have a bigger footprint. It's going to push ramps down farther because the speeds are faster in this area as you're on the freeway, going from a freeway to a freeway. And so, we try to avoid some of those ramp interactions in these areas because of that, if that makes sense.
Okay. And by the way, number 6 was pretty well at the top of my list. But I think we want to see some of those comparisons with this option, with having the 4 interchanges and seeing what you can do for slip ramps for 3100 South still under that scenario, and maybe even for 2400 South.
Yeah, and we can look into that, Mayor, and see if there's an opportunity up there. It really depends on how that interacts with the 201 interchange, which we won't get dive into too much detail on that, but.
Well, conceptually, I think and council jump in here after I'm done, we want normally to have access to Bangerter Highway, which will become a freeway. And we want that to be available for people on our main roads. So 4100 South, typically 3,500 south. What form that takes there, whether it's a slip ramp or a full interchange, we can debate. But we want access where our traffic is, and it's 41st, 35th, 31st, Parkway and 24th. I don't know, there's a big difference there, but probably Parkway is the next most important one, and of course 201. So look at those options to how we can get our community on and off this freeway with a minimum of impact, whether it's slip ramps or frontage roads or whatever. But with the access still there. We've got to have that access.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Okay, council, I'm done. Jump in.
I agree with including option 6 and 3A or B. I'd like us to also keep option 7 on the list. I don't know if it was clear that we're still continuing to look at that one as well. I really like something about option 7 is that there's just one intersection at 31 and Parkway instead of the 2 intersections if the if the frontage road is in the center. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. That's great. And I, the trade-off for that is now we push the freeway out towards the properties, and so you lose that buffer of the frontage between the freeways and the properties, but you gain that potential operational benefit there, and potentially some benefits with the aqueduct as well that runs down the center of Bangor Highway, that you're not allowed to put any structures in that easement. So, there's a benefit for that for sure. Yeah, thank you, council member.
Yeah, 5 and 6, the difference is where you put the frontage road, center or out to the side.
Yeah, 6 and 7.
Right?
6 and
6
7.
and 7, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes. So to me, those are kind of the same thing. It's just where do you put the frontage road? And so I have no problem with that. We do need to narrow it down some. I don't know. I'm still really concerned about having another interchange in our city to accommodate traffic. What we've found is that a lot of people are getting off there in the Lake Park Business Park that go over and go up 48th West. They go over to 5600 West to bypass some of the traffic. So there is quite a bit of traffic that go in those directions. So I don't know.
Yeah, and Mayor, we're gonna take these options and do a more detailed traffic analysis. And we're gonna come back and talk to you about what the impacts are to traffic and connectivity to your surface streets, based on these options that we're looking at. So that'll be our next step there.
Yeah, that'd be good. I agree about that. I think 3100 South, 2400 South, Parkway Boulevard, also the one north of that one. We got a tree right there. We gotta need a break. I think there's a Parkway the right place for people to get in and out. Go to 5600 West and also try to find a way getting on the freeway. So we need to have a break between 3120 Parkway Boulevard and also 2100 South.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely. So that option 6 does a good job of that. It provides that connectivity that you're talking about, council member. That's a good one. And 6 and 7 do that. Well, it sounds like I know we're running out of time, and I don't want to cut anybody off because this is great feedback. But it sounds like option 3 and options 6 and 7 are kind of the options that there's some interest in carrying forward. And so we'll work with Russ and his staff to carry this forward, and then we'll meet back likely in January with you if we can get on your agenda again to talk about it. And this has been very helpful. Thank you so much. And just if there's any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll hop off. And okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Blake. And although probably need some email communications of these to clarify some of your positions. So feel free, council, to send to Wayne comments, concerns, and why you want, any additional items considered or issues considered in this. Okay, so feel free to literally bombard Mr. Pyle with comments. Because this is a very big city and it will impact it. All right. Okay. Thank you. Now we're at almost 25 after, so in just a couple of minutes, we need to, it's pretty soon, we need to start regular council meeting. We've got these different agendas, and I'm going to see for the other meetings, the annual meetings, is there anything there, Wayne, other than budget and minutes?
In fact, there's only the adoption of who are going to be the officers for each of the entities, Mayor, just like we do annually. And then there's one budget opening for the Housing Authority. It's a $350,000 operational budget for a property that was acquired during the year. So there's funding for it. The money's in place, just shows up this way because of the timing of the budget. That's the only thing that's going on in any of the three of them.
Okay. I wonder if maybe we could have our legislative update come via email.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Council, you're okay with that? All right. Anything else that we need to definitely cover tonight?
We received a memo on ranked choice.
That can't wait
voting,
January 5th.
and I just want us to be able to discuss that soon. Not today.
Wayne, will you, and I agree, we probably ought to discuss it. We've done it
Yeah,
before.
absolutely. We can schedule it up. I know Nicole and I have already talked about it. I can't remember if we put it on the communications calendar, but we will if we haven't. If the council wants to hear it, we'll bring it back.
Everyone okay with that? That's just as a discussion item, communication. Okay. Anything else? There's no closed meetings tonight. Don't have any of those items we have to deal with. So unless you have anything else, shall we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Without objection.